So let's bring in the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Nice to see you, sir. Good day to you. We want to show you two different orbits in this universe, okay? Here is orbit number one. Okay. Caroline Levitt says, President Trump is extraordinarily skilled at multitasking and works on multiple challenges at the same time. The president is laser focused on fully achieving the military objectives against the terrorist Iranian regime. The president's sole focus is always victory. So that's from the White House, sir. And this is from Chuck Schumer on the Democratic side, a much different orbit.
Donald Trump is all over the place, seemingly without a clue of what's going on, and they're still worried about, afraid of what he might say or do. That's what this is all about. So let me say this. We are ready to discuss these issues at a moment's notice with Republicans. We will not walk away. We are not walking away, and we want to get to a solution.
So you have the option here of throwing a dart at any issue on the wall that you choose. How do you see that one, sir?
Look, I would simply say, and I've worked with all these individuals. I just was with the president in the Oval Office 2 days ago, and I've negotiated with Schumer. Schumer can't handle almost any single issue. It's really time for him to move aside. He has prolonged this shutdown that's harming America with the TSA. President Trump, people don't give him credit. Strategically, he has been dealing with so many issues. First, cleaning up from the past president, the border, inflation, putting the Middle East in a different situation. From Venezuela to Cuba, and now he's going to curve down what's happened in Iran so they cannot have a nuclear weapon. At the same time, he will have this cabinet meeting with a new cabinet member as well, and putting America on a stronger pace. If people haven't spent time with this president, he can deal with about 10 different issues at one time.
Okay, so then I asked Senator Thune this. He was probably being a little bit more apolitical than you can be now. What would motivate Schumer to actually come to the table and say enough? Like, what? It just seems to me he's not feeling any pain, so he's like, I don't care. The people at the airports, they get it. They don't want ICE. He actually said on the Senate floor that the American people have demanded that ICE be defunded or along those lines. I don't think that's what the American people have said. They said reforms, and President Trump came quite a ways on that.
Well, this is what you're talking about same time in the prior question. Look what President Trump did. Calmed down in Minnesota, changed the direction there with ICE, put a new director in, secretary in at the same time. In the fastest time we've ever had somebody get moved, I think it was in 18 days, at the same time juggling everything else. Schumer is in a tough place. Politically, he is the most disliked leader. He's underwater even with Democrats. So he's not able to really make a decision. He's playing for politics here. He thinks if he puts Americans in worse pressure, they'll just blame the president for it. And that is a really bad position to be in. It's hard to negotiate with somebody like that. More than 40 days, and think about these poor TSA agents. 2 times this year, they've already have not been paid and expect to go to work. And think of the conditions they're working in. People frustrated, angry. I was just through an airport yesterday, and I was very impressed of how the job they were doing and the attitude that they had. I felt sorry for them in the position. It has to have pressure. So I think the best pressure we could do on Schumer is he doesn't get paid if they don't open the government up. That's the only thing they're going to feel. They've got to feel the pressure to act. Otherwise, they won't.
That would be a forcing mechanism, as they say in Washington, D.C. Quick question on this, quick thought on this. Britt was on with Brett last night, and his simple conclusion was that Chuck Schumer and others on the left, whether they're raising money or not, I don't know, but I imagine they are to a degree, but they refuse to give in to anything that would favor Donald Trump. Britt sees right through that. And all of his decades of observing what happens in Washington and Capitol Hill, that's his final conclusion. Would that be your final answer as well?
Yes, and you have to understand, the only way a Democrat can rise in their party is if they fight Trump. Look at Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom has destroyed California. He's become the popular Democrat only because he started to tweet against President Trump, and everything is President Trump's problem. Gavin makes the gasoline in California extremely expensive, and he blames Trump. It is the only way you move in the Democratic Party, so that's a hard way to govern. The other thing for Schumer is politically politically he's in very hot water with Democrats themselves. So he can't do anything but a political action against the president. Hakeem is in the same position, trying to win the House majority, so he just fights Trump all the time. They put us into this shutdown because if you really think about it from an intellectual level, they voted for these bills just a couple weeks before they voted against the same ones they voted for. There was an agreement between Republicans and Democrats. They got the reforms in there, and now they're claiming otherwise.
Okay, so you agree with Britt. That's the final answer.
100%.
Go ahead, Dana.
I agree with Britt a lot of times.
Me too. Senator Mullin is now the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security. He comes from a working class background. Jimmy Kimmel tried to make a joke about that.
Was elected to the Senate, Markwayne Mullin was a low-level MMA fighter and a plumber. That's right. We have a plumber protecting us from terrorism now. It worked for Super Mario. Why not, Markwayne?
How does that land with people out there voting in the future?
It just shows the elitism, that they don't even understand who Markwayne is. He's a very dear friend. Yes, he became a plumber from a bankrupt little shop and built it to be the largest plumbing company in the entire state of Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. He also had a trucking company. He also was involved in a bank and financial. He got elected to Congress and then elected to the U.S. Senate. He is probably one of the most popular members on both sides of the aisle. I was there the night he was sworn in. I saw Fetterman come back to the Republican cloakroom to say congratulations, simply because the work they had done together prior. I watched another Democrat who was his ranking member on committee vote for him, who was a very partisan one, but he says, I know who you are. I was there in the hearing and watched all those Democrats talk about these relationships they had with him. Markwayne is a very experienced businessman, leader, and elected official, and I think that's really what this department needs at this time. A large department, how to go about dealing with this. And if you talk about somebody with security, he used to teach me boxing lessons in the house gym, so I wouldn't want to mess with Markwayne.
Well, he'll be in
Did you
that.
ever see Eric Swalwell in there?
Oh, my God.
I'll let you go. You don't
I'm
even have
so
to answer.
disgusted by that. Yes.
We'll see in the cabinet meeting momentarily. It hasn't begun. Well, the cameras are not in the room yet, but once they are, we'll bring that to our viewers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Kevin McCarthy, thanks for that one. And move
Thank
to
you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.